I want to call the August 23rd, 2016 Daviess County Fiscal Court meeting to order. Commissioner Wathen, would you lead us in a prayer and the pledge?
Dear God, our Father, thank you for all the gifts that you have bestowed on this community and on this great country. Please protect our military, our police, and our firemen. May we never take them for granted. Thank you for our dedicated county employees who work so hard to make our lives better. Please protect the poor and mistreated children of our community. Allow the burdens of their lives to be lifted. Dear God, our Father, please help the communities across America to stop the destruction of our families. And last but not least, please give the members of this court the wisdom and the courage to make decisions that will please you, our Father. In Jesus' name we pray.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Commissioner, thank you. And once again, I want to welcome everyone to our August 23rd, 2016 meeting. We're holding this at 10 a.m. because tomorrow I think most of the court will be in Louisville for the Governor's Local Issues Conference, so we wouldn't be able to have one Thursday. Jenny, are you ready?
Yes, sir. Item 1, consider...
Hold on a minute. That sounds like it's hollow.
It is.
Okay, if you cough, cough toward Charlie, not me.
Item 1, consideration for presentation, A. Daviess County Public Library's 2016-17 tax rate by Director Aaron Waller.
Aaron?
Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning.
As you all know, we receive our rates from the Kentucky Department of Libraries and Archives, and we use that info to determine the best course of action for our revenue every year. For the past 8 years, the Library Board has voted to accept the compensating rate, with the exception being last fiscal year, in which they voted to accept a lower rate in order to stay at the same percentage as previous years. This year, the Board has again voted to accept the compensating rate. For 2016-17, that is 6.4 cents for real property, 8.39 for tangible personal property, 8.39 for aircraft, 8.39 for watercraft, 8.39 for inventory, and 4 for motor vehicles. The total estimated revenue based on compensating rate this year is $4,378,611. Which is up from 2015-16's estimated revenue of $4,174,084. Actuals have been less, therefore we budget usually for less. We've done a lot at the library this year. We've been at capacity for a lot of our programs. We've added some new programs such as an instrument lending service, museum passes that families can check out to use the Owensboro Museum of Science and History. We're also developing a film archive to preserve Daviess County history. We've done lots of partnership with area organizations, and I'm new to this position, so I've been here for about 5 months. So, of course, I've been learning all about Kentucky because I came from Arkansas, and, of course, Daviess County, and it's been very enjoyable. Everyone has been just gracious and helpful, and I just can't say enough. So I thank you all. If you have any questions, I'd be happy to answer them.
Okay, Commissioners, any question or comment about the tax rates? Aaron, the only question I have is, would it be possible for you to send us a list of the programs that the library has provided for the community?
Of course. Would you like me to?
January 1 till present. Let's say the end of August.
Oh, yes, of course, yeah.
The number of participants and where those programs were held.
I can do that. Do you want me to send those to you, or who would you like me to send them to?
Just send it to me or to Jenny.
To Jenny.
Send it to Jenny Warren, and then Jenny can distribute it back out to the commissioners.
Sure.
It's no secret you guys are going to expand. No secret that the county is looking askance at that expansion.
Right.
One of the concerns I have, and Jeremy, you're here and you might address this, one of the concerns we have would be once we spend most of our reserves, that we will start seeing the library costs go up.
Well, I hope not. That's not the plan. So
I know that's
yeah.
it's never the plan.
Right. Yeah.
Nobody ever plans to raise taxes, but unfortunately, that's the reality.
Right. Well, as you all know, I'm sure if you've read the paper, that when I started, I asked the board to amend the plan somewhat to include a few more items because I felt like we had some needs that we weren't addressing. So
And you and I talked about
Yes,
those
yeah.
when
yes,
you came
and so
to
I'm
me.
feeling good about it. I
Good.
feel like we're going to address several needs with it.
Okay,
So yeah.
good. Okay.
Anything else?
Any other questions or comments? Jeremy, do you have anything? Okay.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Thank you very much for the report.
Yeah, thanks.
And we don't need to vote on this. It's a presentation only. Anyone that's watching is welcome to come and look at this document in my office. Okay? Thanks. You guys don't have to stay. If I were you, I wouldn't.
We've got something at the library going on.
Okay. See you.
Thanks.
B, Utica repeater by Dispatch Director Paul Nave.
Paul, I hate to call you up here because I know this is going to be boring.
I'm sorry, Judge.
That's all right.
Judge, Commissioners, I gave you a packet, so it's a small packet, so you can have some figures and a map. The map is mainly what I want you to look at. You see the green dots on the map reflect our current receivers that we have that are active. Each one of those green dots, we're able to partner with the owners of those locations, and we had no recurring cost. So we've been able to do that over the last 7 or 8 years, incorporate these, no recurring costs other than the general maintenance as you would in any other equipment, no monthly recurring cost. Unfortunately, we're at a breaking point. We're trying to build a bridge to the Delta at this point with this tower in Utica, wherein I learned that you can have towers with no electricity. So I learned that the hard way. So there's a tower in Utica that has no electricity, hence we can't put a receiver out there without electricity. So that's where we are at this point. We're going to bid the equipment out, as you approve it today, to put the bid out for the equipment. And the electrical part is on the contract pricing that you guys already have made with the vendor. So my request is that you look at the numbers, and we can still go solar, but you see the solar on page 1 is not cost effective, if you will. By looking at the cost of solar for equipment and labor is around $13,800, and the electrical is $5,987. So the return from solar electricity is about a 25-year return for us to break that on the recurring monthly cost. So the cost basically is going to cost roughly $3.80 a month electricity, and the $22.10 per month that Kinergy will cost for the meter itself. So roughly $26 per month with an expense of roughly $312 a year for the cost for the electricity pole and the items there for that.
Okay. Paul, tell me why, just so the public knows, why is it that we need to put a repeater out in the Utica area?
It's a receiver station. Right now, when the FCC mandated that the radios go from 24 megahertz to 12, it basically cut the radio coverage drastically. So a portable can't reach back to Owensboro to the tower when they're on the portable, on a 4-watt portable. It just doesn't work. So the receivers will pick up that, and it doesn't repeat it. It receives it and then turn around and sends it to the receiver, the voter system in Owensboro, and then it votes it out and sends it to the repeater and repeats it out to everyone.
Okay. Well, first of all, folks, when you hear him say voter, don't think it has to do with any election that's out there. Secondly, this really has to do with the safety of our first responders and ultimately the safety of those folks that live out in that area and may be serviced by those first responders.
That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
That's the bottom line.
You know, Paul, I don't have a problem and did not have a problem with the cost of solar versus the electrical. And while we talk about a 25-year payback, the difference is less than $8,000 to do one over the other. And as you said, you became familiar with towers without electricity being available. And I suspect looking in the future, we're going to run into this more than just this one occasion. My understanding was that in this case, we talked to the manufacturer of the solar equipment, and there was an issue with the way it would be mounted on that tower where there might be some sort of an issue. Is that the case?
That's correct. the solar tower, the solar was a great, and we wanted to go green. Our goal was to go green, and we would love to do that. But because of easement issues and trying to get the solar to a southern face, and it wouldn't mount on top of the tower, we had a lot of foliage around there. We had to go 100 foot into the gentleman's yard, get the area surveyed, and that was just going to be an added expense, you know. So and not
We
to say
wanted
that
to
we
go
won't
there,
solar,
we
we're
wanted
gonna
to go
solar.
there, but
We
it's
did.
just really
If
not
we add
feasible.
tornado sirens in the future, we can go totally solar with those. They're
Right.
equipped to do that, and we won't put those in a foliage area.
Okay.
And at these other sites, we might go solar in the future. We want to go green, but this just wasn't an opportunity to do that.
Commissioner Caslen, you are our liaison. Do you have any question?
No, I don't have any questions. I've talked to Paul quite a lot on this issue over the months, and I just want to thank you, Paul, for your work on this and for your diligence and keeping it on the forefront for us. So,
I think both of us wore him out, didn't we? We even went
Right.
so far, we met out at this site on
did.
several occasions. We talked to the owner of the site, who's what's the gentleman's name?
I've gone blank, I'm sorry.
Atkins, I think.
Who?
I think Atkins.
Atkins. Mr.
Askins?
Atkins.
Atkins.
Atkins. Well, Mr. Atkins was just great. He said, hey, whatever I can do to help.
That's right.
And you like citizens like that. In the end, I think probably the proposal that you have, that going the other way, is the correct way to go. Commissioners, any other? Yes, sir.
You've got 3 red dots on the
Right.
map. So are the other 2 going to cost this much?
Well,
Is that what
we're
it's gonna
looking
be
at,
for each one?
right now we have a grant out for the Whitesville project, so hopefully it will come in October. My goal is to pay for those with grants. So this one we weren't able to get under a grant, but the one in Whitesville, we're hoping to get a grant. In the Moselsville, they're building a tower now, so I'm hoping we can branch off of that tower and apply for a grant in the future for that.
Okay.
So my goal is always to save taxpayers' dollars when possible and using grant money.
And Paul, just to reiterate what we talked about for the safety of our first responders, the tower that we put on the west side, where did that go?
That was on Ork Road.
Yes, Oric?
No, it was.
No, the
Overstreet.
Oric is out at
Overstreet Road, Overstreet
Overstreet
Road, and
Road.
Ork is out in
Right.
Utica.
That tower on Overstreet was used when we had an issue where the city and city police and the county sheriff was involved in an issue out there in Barn Harbor Hills, and without that repeater, the possibility would be there would have been no communication.
I promise guarantee there would have been no communication. In that valley, in that hill, without that receiver there, both agencies could not communicate, and for sure 800 weren't able to get out
Right.
because in that valley. So we were, I mean, it was officer safety that protected the citizens that day without question,
Yes.
and the officer safety that had to make a judgment call that
Correct.
day.
Any other comment, question?
Question,
James?
Judge.
Yes, sorry.
Excuse me. In the near future, what do you, time-wise, to complete these other, we'll say 3 red dots, which would give the whole community the coverage it needs? Are we looking at 2-3 year?
My goal is to get Utica by the end of the year.
Okay.
If the grant comes through for October, we can encompass those and have those done by the end of the year. Maybe January, depending on FCC licensing, and that's come the biggest call right now, trying to get a license for that. That might take several months. But the other one will be a grant next year, so I'm looking at maybe a good 12 calendar year from today. If the grants come through, we could have that, or at least to December of next year.
Yeah.
That's
Takes
my
12
goal.
months to 18 months.
That's correct. That's my goal.
Okay.
Paul, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but how long, you mentioned that the bandwidth had gone from 24 to 12, and I know there's been talk of another adjustment on that. Do you know any clue what the timetable is on that? And again, if you don't know, that's okay.
There's not a date set, but I foresee it's going to be several years out from now. I mean, at least 5 to 7 years before they even start giving a timeline for that.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Question or comment from public? James Lacy, we talked about solar. We want to do it when we can. Come ahead. Well, I knew you couldn't pass. That's why I got you up there.
James Lacey Camiff, 1119 Pembroke, Apartment 4, Owensboro, Kentucky. God bless America, as always. I do appreciate the effort. I know that you talked to me, and I challenged the fiscal court to do something, to install at least one solar panel somewhere as a symbolic effort, and I want to thank you for this. I want to see solar work too, and if this is not practical, I don't want to see solar given a bad name and be unpractical. So I thank you, and I will say this though, but I do have my environmental friends that I go to Sierra Club and everything.
Tree huggers?
Tree huggers.
Just
We
wanted to
had a
make
picture
sure
of a
who they
tree
were.
hugger today in the paper. And I heard the chainsaws going today on Pembroke. You know how I feel about that too. Boy, you got me. You really sidetracked me there. Now I'm telling you right there. But
I know
won't
what
go.
path
I
to
won't go
take
that
you
far off
down.
the tangent. But I would like to say
Okay.
this. Always point out, and the more I do read environment, we always overlook the cost of health consequences into the environment. We just take the lowball number and run with that. And I will remind, I was reading about Kenergy's raise today, that they were raising 17.4%, I believe.
All right, they're not putting one of these up. Let's go on. Let's
Well,
talk
just
about
if
these
I could
tires.
just say this real quick, and I'll finish.
Okay.
But, you know, they're at 12.5 cents kilowatt hour now, and we're talking about the OMU eventually closing both of their production plants. They're talking about that we would be involved in KEMA. We don't know the long-term projections of cost. So I think that too, really, in the long term, 25 years today, really might be a gross underestimate of, and then a reliability issue too. I think of, you know, when power goes out, that's when you need their services the most. Maybe solar would still be operating and their services would be down. I don't know the technical aspects of that, but
I'll be careful next time not to ask you to come up. Thank you for those comments.
Just to let you know, we do have a solar tornado siren the city has incorporated at the new park off of Biddle Road. Has a
Oh,
solar
okay.
panel on it, so we're using that. And so all the new sirens that we get, we can get solar, and it's much more economical to get
Excellent.
solar than it is.
Would that cover, don't we have a new siren that's going to be installed? It's an electronic replacing the old mechanical, and that's part of the problem. The old mechanicals use so much electricity that solar is not practical, but I think the county has a new siren. I can't remember where it's going. Where? Yelvington, at Yelvington.
If it's a new one and they can get, it can be solar, the new ones can be
Won't
solar.
you look at that?
Sure.
Okay. All right, that was a long presentation, and I think, Commissioners, George, you may have been right. Meetings in the morning, there's a lot more discussion. Maybe that's because you're more awake. What do you think? Thanks, Paul.
Thank you, sir.
Jenny, next item.
See Treasurer's Report for July 2016.
Mr. Hendricks.
Cash at the end of July was $25,886,401. The general fund is $8,270,342. July is the first month of our new fiscal year. There was a question about the deficit for the general fund for the month of $2.3 million. That is really nothing more than we have to front-end load some expenses and some transfers that we will then recover later in the year. But I've looked at it, it is a non-issue. I'm aware of nothing to inform the court about as far as what we budgeted. I expect everything to come in within the ranges. So with that, I have no other comment.
Commissioners, any question or comment of the treasurer? That was just a report. We don't vote on it. Next item, Jenny.
Item 2, consideration for approval. A, minutes of the August 4th and 12th, 2016 court meetings.
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. You haven't been sniffing helium, have you? It's really changed your voice. Commissioners, you've had a copy of the minutes in your packet for some time. Are there any additions, deletions, or corrections? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
B, all claims for all departments.
Move to approve.
Second.
Again, Commissioners, you've had a copy of all the bills due and payable by Daviess County Fiscal Court in your possession. Do you have any questions of the treasurer at this time? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
C, Owensboro Health Regional Hospital amended bylaws.
Move to approve. Second.
I have a motion, second. Commissioners, today we vote on something that we've been looking at for the last 3-4 months. We've had folks from the hospital talk to us. We've had individuals out in the community talk to us. Staff, Claude has worked on this with us. I think we have finally come to an agreement that both the hospital and the two commissions can live with. I think it's a good agreement. I think one of the things that it does is it recognizes the changing environment in healthcare. I think I can tell you that 5 years ago, the hospital came to us and asked for a couple of these issues to be resolved, and quite frankly, we didn't feel that it was time to move forward. This time around, I think that we're being very pragmatic and looking at it and granting a part of their request. Everyone out there knows that the bylaws must be brought before the city commission and the county commission for approval. That's according to when Owensboro Health was established back, was it 2003 when that was set up? Contrary to what some folks would argue, we do not run the hospital. We don't run the day-to-day hospital. There are certain items that we have purview over because we are the guardians of the, it kind of, in my opinion, Claude, we're the guardians of the public's part in this community hospital. So with that, Claude, do you want to take us through the changes, just briefly, the changes that we're going to make?
Okay. I'm going to amend Section 303, Section 8 of the bylaws to permit a person to take office at the time of an election, and they meet the criteria of if once someone has resigned. Section 303J will permit addition of a partial term. They still can serve 3 terms, but adding a partial term. Section 312 will permit a non-board, a non-position, a non-hired, a hired physician.
Employee physician.
Employed physician.
Employee physician.
Employed physician to do that.
Okay.
To be a member of the board. And then executive committee, I think those are all just minor ones, right, Judge, that they're just changing the names.
So in effect, what we're going to do is, if this court were to appoint a member to the board and a year into that 3-year term, they had to resign, and we appointed someone to take their place for the next 2 years. Those 2 years would not go against the three-year terms that they would be eligible
Correct.
to serve.
They could serve up to 11 years.
Right. The second issue is that we have to understand that healthcare is changing, right, not just in this community, but healthcare all over. And somebody said, well, it's because of the Affordable Care Act. Folks, this was way before the Affordable Care Act ever took place. Right. And we have more and more physicians who are becoming employees of the hospital. As a matter of fact, I believe that approximately 60% of the physicians that are eligible to serve at the hospital or have hospital privileges are employees of that hospital. It's becoming harder and harder to find non-employee physicians who are willing to serve on the board. So that would be number one. And number two, when you have such a large number of employee physicians serving and there is no one there representing them, they feel like they're left out. So I know 5 years ago, we were asked to do it. We felt that it was not the proper time. This time we were asked to do it, and I think to grant 1 out of the 4 physician board members to be an employee is not an unreasonable request, and certainly we can always, if it proves to be an issue, we can change it. I know there was some question about whether there would be a conflict of interest, and quite frankly, folks, anytime you're appointed to a board, anytime you're elected to an office, there is always the potential for a conflict of interest. But we all have ethics that we go by. We hope that we appoint ethical people. We hope that we appoint people who can recognize a potential conflict. And I believe that just as we talk among ourselves, if we have an issue and would need to recuse ourselves, I would assume that the hospital board would, if that individual didn't think it was a conflict, that the chair or someone would bring it up. So I really don't, I just see it as the city and the county being pragmatic, recognizing the change in healthcare throughout the United States and adopting and adapting to that. Claude, I think you're right. The others just have to do with some housekeeping, and it's not a substantial change to anything else. To be quite honest, I don't care really what you call your working committees. The other issue, and we didn't say it, but it was, right now I believe that the hospital has to report to the city and the county at a joint meeting. Well, it's hard enough to get us together for a regular scheduled meeting to try to get two local elected boards together. As long as they're here giving us the same information, then I see no reason why they couldn't do that. So with that, we have the chair of the hospital board, Debbie Nunley, Commissioner Debbie Nunley here. If you wish to say anything, or anyone here representing the hospital, if you want them to make a statement, you're welcome to. I would tell the commission that the city commission considered this at their last regularly scheduled, I think it was August 16th, maybe, that meeting, and they passed this resolution. So, yes, sir.
I just want to reiterate, you covered it all, the history pretty well, but I know I was one of them that was on the fiscal court when you came to us 5 years ago with the recommended changes, particularly the one with the having employees on the, and I understand they're physicians, employees on the board, and that was one that I was adamantly opposed to 5 years ago, and it's one that I've struggled with getting to where we are even today, which is a compromise position of one versus the four. I hope that as this, apparently this, I think years ago this wasn't real common for the hospital to own most of the doctor offices and shops. It has become very common, and I know in other states. I talked to a physician years ago when he was a brand new physician in Owensboro, and he wasn't from here, and I asked him, well, why didn't you stay where you were? And he said, oh, there, the hospital's on all the shops. So anyway, it's a concern of mine. I'm willing to go the one, but I have reservations, and I would ask you to try to look before you ever come back again and see what other communities are doing to address this, because it's not new. And and the judge mentioned if you have a conflict, you're supposed to step aside from the vote. But I see some undue influence that could be put to an employee if they're on the board, and certainly that depends on who the boss is. And I'm not saying that I have that concern with you, Greg. So anyway, so
okay. I think, and I would think that while the chair is coming up, we had a conversation about this 5 years ago when we met, and Chairperson Nunley said yes, the judge said no, and said get out. and that was pretty much the end of it, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was.
Yes.
Charlie, I understand where you're coming from. We as a system certainly look at other systems our size like systems, and this is a very common trend. In fact, in many cases, the CEO actually serves on the hospital board. And that was something that was brought to our board. That was a proposal which was voted down by the board, so we didn't even present that to you. I will say this, when we have very sensitive issues, our board always meets in closed session after our board meeting and our executive meeting. So it's just the board members. There's no CEO, none of the staff, whatever. And that's when a lot of these votes that are sensitive occur. So the CEO nor the administrative team would have any knowledge of who voted how and how many voted, if it was unanimous or whatever. So there's some semblance of protection there.
Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioners, any other comment?
I'd just like to make a comment,
Sure.
Judge. Excuse me. I appreciate Charlie's comments. I wasn't on the commission 5 years ago, but those were very good points, Charlie. I appreciate your comments, and I believe the direction of moving forward with the one physician on the board is something, as the judge said, with the new health care, the way it's going. I just wanted to say, I wanted to thank you, Charlie, for your comments.
Okay. No other comments up here? I know I have a very interested person out here in the audience. James Lacey. You're Mr. Public today, aren't you? Okay.
James Lacey, Campus, 1119 Pembroke, Apartment 4, Owensboro, Kentucky, United States of America. God bless America. Judge, I really wasn't going to come down and speak about this today, but the more I thought about it, the more I really wanted to. As I applied for a board myself one time and apparently was rejected, so I do have a little bit of fighting a dog in this fight. We even limit the President of the United States to 8 years. And 400,000 federal employees. The idea of complexity was brought up about the hospital as a complex, medical care is complex. It is. But when the president oversees 400,000 federal employees, $1 trillion worth of discretionary spending, we decide every 4 years whether we want to keep him or not. So I think we could afford to look at these, that these are not untrainable positions. But what bothers me about this too is the hospital just operates in such an air of non-transparency, in my opinion. All the board members are closed. I mean, all the board meetings are closed. And now, and I talk to young people and try to get them involved in government, and now we're going to elect people to these boards that 11 years, 12 years, that they're going to have influence. People nominate them in position that have been gone from local government for 12 years. And so I think this idea of just being closed to transparency is just going to perpetuate itself on and on. And I would like to commend Commissioner Caslin. He has really kept his eye on the hospital, and he's taken some really tough votes about the hospital expansion to begin with. After all, we're talking about the largest employer in Daviess County. We're talking about decisions of $700 million to build a new hospital when we didn't have a hospital already. And now we're going to appoint people to these positions that really are going to be there for years and years. So just two other things I'd like to say too is I really don't think this will be changed, in all honesty. Once this is put forward, it would just be one of the most amazing political things that I've ever seen, that this would be overrode and these positions would be reduced down in time. And so, even OMU is considering televising their meetings now, and I have to credit OMU. It's much more transparent than our local hospital, and I just do not understand why all this. Even the local paper has a hard time really reporting on our local hospital. In my opinion, almost everything that's in the paper is a press release from the hospital, and we all know that recently some of their bonds were downgraded, I believe, and so I would just encourage. I know the decision is probably already made at this point, but that's what really kind of wasn't going to speak. But as I thought about this more and more, and somebody has spoke out about their lack of transparency, this is not going in a direction to me that will facilitate any additional transparency of the hospital. Thank you for letting me speak.
Just a couple of comments. First, I don't believe the bonds were downgraded. They're still rated at whatever the rate. I know the cities was downgraded. Sorry, Debbie, but the hospitals were not. The second thing is the president's limited to 8 years, but the folks that really make some of the biggest decisions that affect our everyday life, the Supreme Court judges, are appointed for life. As we have some senators that seem to be there forever, and representatives, and we even have mayors and judges and commissioners that serve a long, long time. So I'm not sure that I would accept that comparison as apples to apples. Again, you talked about elected boards of directors. That may apply only to those community directors. I think the health representatives, they are selected and are elected, but the others are appointed, and they are appointed here and at the city and jointly. I won't get into the argument about whether it's a public or private facility. I know Don and I have had that conversation back and forth, and lots of folks have, but the courts have held that it's not a private or a public facility, so, and subject to those laws. Anyway, if there are no other questions, no other comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And James Lacey, thank you for those comments. We need more citizens to come and voice the concerns about what the largest employer in our community does. I want to thank you folks for being here. Have you made the announcement yet, Debbie? Is there? Yeah. Why don't you come up and let's yeah. Why don't we do this in the spirit of full disclosure and transparency? Chair lady, why don't you make this announcement?
And I should call this gentleman Greg T. Strahan for Greg Transparency Strahan. And you can ask any employee at our hospital. That is one of the things that they admire about him the most. But last evening, our board voted to name Greg our permanent president and CEO of the hospital.
Okay. Well, congratulations.
Thank you. It's nice to be here. It's nice. I appreciate your input into this, these bylaw changes. They will be beneficial to us, I think, in terms of filling the gaps that we have. We are looking for more young people, and young women would be nice to have on the board. So we've actually added some of the communities, the young group in town, to ask them for it. But it takes a lot of time to invest in a committee such as a hospital board, and that's probably where we have most of the pushback, because the meetings go long as yours do, and sometimes it creates a real problem for them. But we are very anxious to become more transparent, Mr. Lacey, and look forward to hopefully you'll hear more and more about that. But we appreciate what the work you've done for us, and we'll make sure that we do the right thing, Charlie. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Greg. And you know, just Debbie and I had a conversation regarding trying to get young people, trying to get minorities, trying to get those folks to serve on the board, and it's not the most controversial board. I think probably OMPC is the more controversial board, but I think it's one of those boards where it takes a tremendous amount of time to serve in a manner that you're expected to serve in. So anyway, thank you guys for being here. Again, congratulations, Greg. So don't feel like you got to stay. You're welcome to go, and if you go, take James Lacey with you. James Lacey, you can stay. All right.
Greg, congratulations.
All right. Good. Okay, next item, Jenny.
D, Resolution 15, 2016, an agreement regarding rural secondary program funds.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion second. I look over there. Why is our engineer not here? Oh, he's at a conference. Doggone it. Are you going to talk about these rural secondary funds? Thank you. You just bailed him out.
This is an agreement that we sign annually with the state. This particular program is for rural secondary roads. The roads are named in that second paragraph on page 1. I think all of you already are aware because you determined the roads. There's a $293,771. Mark's crew will do the work on those roads, and then the state will reimburse us. And this agreement simply spells out what the county's expected to do, and that we must expend the dollars, that we cannot expend more than what we've been given, or the court is the one responsible. And it's a routine contract, same one that we signed, just different set of numbers, different road, and I would recommend approval.
Commissioners, any question or comment? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
E, parking lease agreement addendum with the city of Owensboro.
Motion approved.
Second.
Have a motion second. Mr. Hendricks, I assume that since your parking spot's the one that people come out there and park in, this doesn't have anything to do with yours, but it's the parking lot to the east of our parking lot? Is that the one?
I don't know if that's the one, if all of them are there or in another spot with the city, but basically this agreement covers parking places that are rented by the administrative office of the courts.
This is the parking garage. It says 100 Davis
Okay.
Street parking garage.
So they're just adding 4 spots to the agreement, and AOC reimburses us for those spots, so we just kind of flow the funds through, but I've looked at it, it's in order with what I was told verbally, so I recommend approval.
Okay, any question or comment? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
F, advertise bid number 29, 2016, Utica Radio Voting Receiver Site Project.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Commissioners, you heard Paul Ney talk about this issue. This is permission for Jordan to advertise. Any question or comment? I'd just like to reiterate what Commissioner Castlin said. I appreciate all the hard work that Paul did. I think this really started beginning of this year, could have been in November or December of last year. We've been working on this one spot for quite some time. So, Paul, while you're not here, thanks. If there are no other question or comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
G, advertise for transfer station truck driver if not filled internally.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion, second. Commissioners, I think last week, Jenny, we had a truck driver resign, and this is permission to advertise for a truck driver with a CDL. You know how hard it is to keep those. The first place we'll go is internally to see if we have any employees who would like to move into this position. If we do not, then we'll advertise. If we have one that takes this position, we will look to fill his position. So, any question or comment? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
H, promote Ben Howerton from utility laborer to service technician in the Department of Public Works effective August 29, 2016.
Move to approve.
Second.
I have a motion and second. Commissioners, again, this always brings pleasure to my heart because this is one of our current employees moving up, being promoted into another position. Ben is a very hard worker. I think he was reviewed. He was looked at. What was the committee, Jenny? Charlie served on it. You served on it. And Mark served on it and made the decision to promote. So, since we're promoting him, is Austin so we'll get to Austin. But anyway, congratulations, Ben, on the promotion. Any other comment or question? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
I, hire Austin Bean as a utility laborer in the Department of Public Works effective upon successful completion of pre-employment screenings.
Motion approved.
Second.
I have a motion and second, and Commissioners, I just follows H. He's being hired to replace Ben. And again, you had a committee met and interviewed. How many people interviewed?
7, wasn't it?
Seven people interviewed.
And we had some really good candidates.
Good.
to pick
So I
from.
hope we send them a letter of encouragement, telling them that we continue to have folks. So I knew we would. Any other question or comment? There being none, all in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carries.
3, ordinances. A, first reading of ordinance 8, 2016, an ordinance relating to the adoption of the 2016 tax rates.
This is a first reading. We will vote on it at our next meeting. County Treasurer, do you want to read these rates, or do we need it? You do it? Go ahead.
Yes, Judge. Annually, the fiscal court must adopt an ordinance for the tax rates. Even if none of the rates change, you're still required to do this annually. This ordinance was prepared there's no additional taxes being added. There are also no tax increases. Actually, the ordinance was prepared this year with accepting the compensating rate, and the compensating rate actually decreased this year because of the additional assessments. Therefore, the rates I will be reading, the prior 13.6 cent rate for real property is dropping to 13.5 cents, and the 18-cent personal property is dropping to 17.89. With that, I'll read the rates into the record. And the rates I'm reading, they are cents per $100 of value. So the real property rates, again, is 13.5, tangible personal property 17.89, public service company real property 13.5, public service company tangible 17.89, distilled spirits 17.89, motor vehicles 17 cents, watercraft 17 cents, large non-commercial documented watercraft, which is referred to as line 41, is 17.89, aircraft is 17.89, agricultural products, which is mainly tobacco and storage, is 1.5, other agricultural products 4.5, and bank deposit tax of 2.5. This is the first reading.
Commissioners, any question or comment?
I have a comment.
Yes, sir.
And I think I've said this before, but you know, it's nice to be sitting here talking about not raising taxes and then, in fact, decreasing the rates. And I think we should mention the fact that this started, 2 or 3, or at least a year ago, whenever we started a budget process, and we're very efficient in that process. But more importantly, it's the efficient operation of our business by our employees. So I think that's something we need to never take for granted, that we're able to do this because we're efficient. So I just want to say that.
Well said, Commissioner. Any other question or comment? County Treasurer, you and I had this conversation yesterday. We've looked at some other taxing authorities, and when they took a compensating rate, instead of theirs dropping, it stayed the same. And I think for the disclosure to the public out there, that quite possibly could have been whether you rounded up or you rounded down, and the size of the tax that they charge.
Mathematically, it could be. In the piece of paper they included today, it looks like the compensating rate actually was 6.5 last year, and they didn't take it.
Okay.
They left it at 6.4.
Okay.
So they would have dropped too.
Yes.
But they didn't.
They did take it the year
compensating rate
before.
last
Okay,
year.
and specifically, Commissioners, I was talking about the library because we had that conversation yesterday, why our rate went down and why theirs didn't. So, okay. Next item, Jenny.
Consideration for discussion. A, other business to be brought before the Daviess County Fiscal Court. I am not aware of any. B, public comments.
Okay, this is a time during our meeting in which we ask the public to come forward, identify themselves at the podium, and they're welcome to speak on any item other than what's on the agenda. Mr. Public says he doesn't have any. Next item.
Comments by Daviess Fiscal Court.
Commissioner Castlin.
The only thing I want to say is on 4A that we just passed on, the other business. When I first joined this body back 5.5 years ago, I remember mentioning to you that I really didn't like that slot. And so I really appreciate that you've essentially had us stop using it. So thank you.
I would tell you that while your comments to me had tremendous influence, it had no impact. But Jenny Warren's comments to me and the threat that she made had a tremendous impact.
Well, thank you, Jenny, for making whatever comments you made.
Commissioner
Feelings
Watson.
mutual.
Pass.
Commissioner Coger.
No comment, Judge.
Commissioner Coger's still trying to get his land legs back. He's been on a cruise, Alaska?
Yes.
All right. Was it good?
It was really good. Good weather. The ocean was calm, which is good.
Always is
we
good.
got to see, you know, the icebergs and actually killer whales, humpbacks,
All
and
right.
we seen a mother bear with three cubs, which is unusual, and got to see the salmon, and she was actually catching the salmon and feeding her cubs. So right there within probably 15 feet of us. So it is a nice trip, but you know it's about 3,000 miles, so a lot of miles.
You
on the
wore
water.
out.
So
Yeah.
I'm a little tired. I just got in last night, so thank you for asking.
All righty. Just a couple things. The Sheriff's Department received a Homeland Security grant of roughly $14,000. That money is to buy ammunition, believe it or not, so that they become better experts with firearms. The majority of the commission will be gone to the Governor's Local Issue Conference in Louisville Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. Commissioner Colger, I don't believe you're going, so if you have any complaints about what's going on in the county, call Commissioner Colger at BR 549. I'd like to let the public know, particularly the neighborhoods of Friendly Village and Cedar Hills, that, and Claude, correct me if I am wrong, that we have finally come to an agreement in principle. It's still in draft form, but an agreement in principle with RWRA, the Public Service Commission, the Division of Water, and Daviess County Fiscal Court.
That's correct. It's just a matter
I
of getting
would,
it
I would
finalized.
hope that as soon as we have that out of draft form, that we will have meetings with each neighborhood to let them know what the next step in this
We'll
proceeding
get
will
those
be.
approved by the Franklin Circuit Court. And
Well, and we are still waiting for Franklin
Yes.
Circuit Court to make their receiver. But it's been a long process, folks, but we are closer today than we were this time last year. Pretty much, our meetings in September are on the 8th of September and the 22nd of September, both at 5 p.m. I might change them to 10 a.m. You guys are really good at 10 a.m. where you're kind of yawning at 5 p.m. There's no other business to be brought before Daviess County Fiscal Court without exception. We're adjourned.